Welcome to Crit Hit Interviews. I'm Shrimp, and today I'm joined by Arlene.
Hellos.
And Lovie.
Hello.
And today we're interviewing Michael Vansleve from Armitage Games. How are you
Hello.
doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Alright, so before we get to talking about Bannerman, let's talk about you a little bit. We know you have a collection of armor and weapons that helped you make Bannerman. What is that normally used for? Are you in the Renaissance fairs or LARPing?
Okay, so I used to be a reenactor. So I used to do like 15th century War of the Roses type reenactment. And since then, I've kind of have turned into a bit of more of the LARPing scene. We don't really have much of a Renaissance fair. It doesn't really exist over here in Australia. So yeah, it's more like the LARPing scene is what I'm part of now. But I used to do the real hardcore, real strict reenactment where it's like, oh, you got to make sure you got the right buckles on your shoes. That's not period and all that sort of thing.
Oh, they both sound fun.
They are a great time, but the best thing about the LARPing compared to like the real strict reenactment is you get a lot more people involved. So instead of doing something with 20 or so people, you do it with a couple of hundred.
Yeah.
Which sort of builds the scale a bit more, a bit easier to get into, so you get more people involved.
So, you started making text adventures in mid-90s using Qbasic, mods for Quick 1, custom levels for ZZT, but is there anything you think you took from those experiences that helps you now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, the main thing I took from playing around a lot as a kid is I have a pretty good repository built up in my brain of things I know that work and don't. So I have failed many times at many different things, and I know sort of the wrong way to go about it, I suppose would be the best way to put it. So I'm like, I want to draw a menu, for example. I can think back at the many times that I've made the worst menu possible, and I can sort of use that now to make sure I actually have a better idea of what I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I always think of game development it's failing upwards until you actually have something that's any good. So I've failed many times before. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, the best way usually to know how to do something is to know how not to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my
RPG
Maker days, Christ.
Yeah, like those text adventures I made in Qbasic were some of the worst Zork clones that have ever existed ever. But I imagine if I went to make a text adventure now, it'd probably be okay because I've made so many of them that were just awful.
Fair enough. And I mean, like, the dialogue in Bannerman, though it's a little sparse here and there, is still, like, solid. Man,
yes,
I cannot imagine it being a happy text adventure, though.
No, that's it. It's such Bannerman is such a dark, depressing game. So,
Yeah.
But that was sort of a new thing that I tried. A lot of my typical thing is not such a morose sort of setting for everything, but that was something new that I tried on Bannerman.
All right, so in regards to Bannerman, a lot of people have probably already touched on the game in regards to reviews, streaming, and Let's Plays. Do you have a favorite memory of watching someone play your game, whether it's on YouTube or at a convention, or even just someone testing it?
Oh, probably my favorite one experience with Bannerman is watching someone play. It's actually one of my friends really early on when I was just trying to refine some of the stages, I think. So the actual gameplay mechanics were in place, but I was more working out, sort of distribution of enemies and things like that. And he was actually fighting the Ranger boss. And
oh God.
Back then, we had a lot more health for testing purposes. So he essentially had like a good 30 or so hits that he could take just so we could sort of figure out what was going on without having to constantly restart. And he copped about 30 arrows to the face in rapid succession, one after the other. And then I sort of went, oh, maybe I should tweak that AI a little bit and make it a little bit more predictable in terms of how he fires the arrows out.
Oh, God.
Because at that point, it was actually semi-random when he fired, and that was the worst decision that I ever made. So I'm glad I caught that relatively early on, but that was that was an experience watching that unfold in front of me. I was just watching him do it. I'm like, whoa, okay. Little mistake there. I might try to tweak that just a touch. The problem is, of course, is because I made the game, I know exactly how all the timings work and everything like that. So it's the hardest thing to balance is your own game without outside input. So I'm there playing through that boss, and I'm like, oh, it's perfect. I can do it without taking a hit. Look how easy that is. Might be a little bit too easy, actually. I might have to up that just a touch. And then this sort of made me realize. So it became my way of balancing going forward was if I get hit playing through something, for example, so playing through a boss, if I take a hit, I go, that's probably too difficult, and I should be able to play through it without getting hit at all. And then that was sort of my benchmark for the difficulty itself.
Huh. Yeah, the ranged characters in that game, I was like, you bastards, but especially the archers, is like the cleric's projectile is pretty mean. The rangers, I always found their timing a bit hard because I was listening for the noise for when I dodged, and that wasn't always the best indicator. I noticed it didn't always directly align. I was like, damn it. The air ones were fine. The ones that like drop on you, I can dodge those all day. It's the straightforward ones. So it's just like, and I dodged into it and got knocked back, and you shot me again. Okay.
Yeah,
but, you know,
ripped.
I like the ranger, though. He's fine. He's perfectly well balanced. Fuck the cleric. I said it in the review. I will say it now. Fuck the cleric. Do not like him.
The one that most people seem to be having problems with on the whole is actually the big fella with the shield, the Colossus. Seems to be the one that drives most people up the wall, and I find him probably the easiest. So
yeah, actually, he's really slow, and you can bait him into doing stuff, and he has this really long times. The bruiser, like the first guy, can corner you, and if he ever does, you're just dead because he just keeps knocking you down. I found that out in like you see it in the review. Actually, just watch him like laying into me like I owed him money. Yeah, he beat me like I owed him money. It was not good.
I completely mopped the floor with you.
Yeah, it was a little embarrassing. The next time I went in there, I had saved a bow for that and just walked in there and filled him with arrows and just kept walking.
Just five arrows to the face will do it,
Because they do damage straight to health, and he never has armor. So it's just like tunk, 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 tunk. Oh, onwards. Let's go.
Yeah, that's it. A viable strategy.
But the cleric, like, no matter what, I generally find them really tricky, and it's partly because they spam minions. Even the man-at-arms, he can summon a minion, and it's tankier than those, which was an issue later, but as long as you don't give him an opportunity to summon them, it's not too bad, and you stay really aggressive. The cleric keeps teleporting back when you're hitting him, and then summoning minions and shooting you with a ranged attack while you're dealing. I was just like, oh, the dodge timing is terrible here. Because I would like, dodge one attack into another and just be like, cries. Okay. I'm surprised I didn't die more. Like,
you did somehow amazingly well.
Yeah, which I'm amazed. I'm like, I'm somehow above the bell curve.
Like, oh yeah, by quite a bit. You're sort of online for a lot of the testers, to be honest. So you came pretty close. This is people that have played it multiple times before, sort of different iterations, but they basically died about as much as you did.
I mean, I do QA as like a hobby thing almost, because I like helping indie people, and so I play a lot of games.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it. That always helps.
Yeah, I definitely died a lot more on my playthroughs. So I was like, man, why is Arlene so good at this game?
Yeah.
Oh, did you tinker with it while I was like asleep?
Yeah.
How was it?
I think I died like 3 times on the Ranger boss actually. So, but I found it once I figured out like how it works and everything. It wasn't hard, but
it helps if you come in there with full armor too, because he's really bad if you have no armor, because he just peels you apart.
Mm-hmm. So you did pretty much everything for Bannerman, but you did have help for some things. How did you find the people that did end up working with you, like Josh Storham and Jonathan Sordello?
Oh, actually, I met them probably, it'd be like 6-7 years ago, sort of friends of a friend, and we've become really good mates since then. And it just happened, sort of happy coincidence, that they happened to be in a couple of bands over those years, and they've both been playing the guitar for an extremely long period of time. And the sort of music that they've done in the past was a pretty good fit. We sort of basically took what they used to do, went acoustic with it, and it just happened to be a good fit for it. So that's sort of just a happy coincidence knowing those guys. And awesome. Yeah, they did a really good job. But thankfully I didn't have to sort of trawl around trying to find suitable musicians and that sort of thing, and tee up recording sessions and that sort of jazz.
It's really lucky. It's like, oh, I have a friend that does the things I need.
Like minstrel style music.
Yeah. No, they're really versatile sort of guitarists. So they've done they do metal and things like that quite a bit as well. So they're kind of jack of all trades. They've done a fair amount of session musician sort of gigs before, where you basically just turn up and play a part for another band in a recording studio or similar. So they've played most genres and most styles, and they can do all of them equally well.
Is it bad that I'm almost hoping for a metal remix of like a band right now?
That has happened. That has happened in the recording sessions quite a lot when we're sort of mixing everything together. We're like, let's just do just a little quick little metal version of that.
You should have recorded those and posted them. Great.
That would
just
be
like
awesome.
a metal version of it with like highlights of some of the more grittier, violent war scenes in Bannerman. Be perfect.
I'm pretty sure I've got some of those recordings somewhere. They'll be buried somewhere on some hard drive. Actually, yeah, I should have another look and see if they're still there.
Well, in regards to the game, is there anything that you really wanted to add in and just couldn't make it?
Oh, yeah, there's absolutely tons. So, when originally planning out Bannerman, the overall sort of like list of things I wanted in the game just was almost innumerous. But just due to the nature of basically making it by yourself, I just had to cut so much down to actually make it into something that I could achieve. And even then, it still took me like over 2 years to get it done. Originally, like, to give you an idea of like the original concept for it, you have multiple weapons, like main weapons that you could use. So there was going to be a pole axe and sort of like a large like Dane axe and a spear that you could also use, but that would require doing all the animations for all of those as well. There was going to be almost RPG sort of aspects to it, where each day when you camp, then you had different decisions to make, and almost like you're leading a group of men yourself. But all those sorts of things, it's just as I went through it, when I was planning it out properly, I decided to cut everything out that wasn't absolutely essential to what I wanted the game to be. So I basically sat down and went, what do I want to have happen in Bannerman? And I said, really good combat. And I go, okay, so then you don't need these RPG aspects. You don't need this monetary system that you were planning out and trade routes and things like that. I'm like, get rid of that, get rid of this. So in terms of the actual list of things that I wanted to put in, there's hundreds or thousands of them. But that's sort of making any game, to be honest. They all just get cut at some point.
Because of that, though, are you planning on making any games in the future that like include some of those elements that you really liked?
Or alternatively, adding any of those features later on to Bannerman? Like there was the gauntlet that got added later on. Yes.
There's not really too much more I want to add to Bannerman itself at this point, outside of perhaps tweaking some of the levels and changing how some of them work, based on sort of how I've seen people get through them and cope with certain sections. But that's sort of an ongoing process, so you can almost call that patching really at this point. In terms of putting sort of things I wanted to in future games, then definitely there's some things I'd love to do there. I'd love to basically take what Bannerman was going to be and remove this combat system out of it, and I think that on its own could actually be quite a good game. It'd be almost a strategic, almost something along the lines of FTL, really, would what it end up being at the end of the day. So, yeah, there's lots of things like that. And in saying that, the reason Bannerman came about in the first place and that sort of combat model came about was because of games I've made in the past, and I cut out certain sections, and that's why Bannerman ended up coming about. So, yeah, it constantly works like that. There's I've got a giant book just behind me, actually, that's just full of things that I want to put in the game one day. So there's many things.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so there's many things in there. So they'll all end up making it into a game at some point, I'm sure of it.
Because of that, actually, do you ever plan on building a studio, like having more people help you work on games so that you can achieve that goal?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to end up having a proper studio one day. So, following on for Bannerman has been enough of a success now that my wife can come work with me on the next game. So I've sort of taken one step up. So she was working full time while I was working on Bannerman, and I was working sort of just weekends while that was happening. It's made enough money now that she can essentially leave her full-time job and come work with me on the next game. So
that's pretty
all
good.
Things going, yeah, it's gone well. So all things going well is that will sort of, I can kind of build on that with the next one and the one after that, and then eventually, yeah, get something big enough that I can tackle sort of larger scope projects, because that's what I'd love to give that a try, rather than working on what is necessarily always a small scope when you're working basically by yourself.
Alright, so you made a documentary about your process making Bannerman, and it's fairly unique. How did that come about?
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, the sort of Just Make Game series. I have always liked editing and filming videos and that sort of thing, and I came to a realization rather early on, it was actually sort of just before starting on Bannerman, that I would need to do something that kept people informed with the process, so you know, they can follow along as the game sort of develops and eventually comes out. And I looked at the ways that most people generally do sort of dev blogs and that sort of thing, where it's normally just it's like essentially a Tumblr or something similar, just a bunch of text posts, couple of images. And I'm not the best writer in the world when it comes to just writing out big text posts of what I've been doing, and it's not something I particularly enjoy. So I thought I would just turn it into video format instead, because I find it much easier to talk to a camera and then edit it together after the fact than sit there and go, what am I going to write for this month? Oh yes, I started this and did this and so on and so on. But that's been a really beneficial thing. That's probably one of the best things I did in with the development of Bannerman, was doing this video process, because people have taken to it really well, and I've ended up building up quite a core little fan base mainly through those videos that follow along sort of step by step of the way, and they're all really interested, waiting for the game to come out. And I wouldn't have had that sort of support if I didn't do anything at all, if I took a different approach. I feel I think it sort of drew a lot of people in, and it sort of, most people were interested in sort of how it is to make a game, and not the sort of overproduced videos that you see where everyone's like, oh, we all get along great. Look, we just tapped on a couple of keys. Oh, fantastic. It's done now. What a nice time. It's more like, you know, each month one comes out, and this is going over for over 2 years, and you can sort of watch me go slowly insane as it progresses along, to be honest.
I actually found it really neat too, because there's like almost a tutorial aspect to it as well. Like when you're showcasing,
yeah, that's right.
For instance, things like the rotoscoping.
Yeah. So like that's it. It's like there's a lot of people out there interested in how games get made, and there are things sort of covering how it works and that sort of jazz, but they never really go all that in depth with it. It's kind of like this mystical art. They go, oh yeah, great. Oh yes, it all just sort of happens in the studio. We don't really show you anything that happens, and then they go, oh look, we've got a demo, and that just appeared out of nowhere. So I sort of wanted to go a bit more sort of raw with it and just show people what it is like, especially from my perspective of essentially quitting my full-time job at that point and going, look, I'm just going to make a game and we'll see if it works or not, and you know, to see what happens if you do that sort of thing.
Fair enough. So for this process, would you actually recommend it for others to do the same thing? Do you feel it would actually benefit a lot of other indie developers?
Yeah, I really do think so. And I think it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. If you're doing a video or text posts or whatever, it's just as long as you pick something that you're good at, then I think it's one of the best things you can do is have something where people can follow along and follow along with the actual development of the game. So I don't necessarily think that videos would be the perfect fit for every developer out there, especially if you've never filmed anything or you don't know how to edit videos and you don't have the right equipment for it, then probably not the best choice. But if, for example, you have, a really nice, smooth talking voice and a lovely mic, and you've done podcasts and things in the past, then I think like a development podcast would also be a very good choice. It's more just every sort of developer out there needs to do something, because the people that will follow along with development are the people that are most interested in the game, and you need some way of assisting them to actually follow along and follow the game from beginning to end. And a lot of developers seem to develop in this like little vacuum. They basically insulate themselves from the world, work on their game, and then when it's finished they go ta-da and sort of open a little box and the game flies out. And most of the time no one cares, because there's so many games around these days that you go ta-da and everyone's like, what? Yeah, I'm not really too interested in that. And it is very important to involve people in the process, because then they get invested in the game itself.
So, you said you were inspired by Genesis games like Flashback and Golden Axe. Were there any non-game inspirations for Bannerman?
Yeah, so probably the most sort of storyline-wise is probably where mostly inspiration comes from, but it's basically a lot of the things that happened in the War of the Roses in England back in the sort of 1600s. That was a very sort of tumultuous time historically, where there were a bunch of kings all proclaiming themselves as kings and other people going, no, I'm king. And it was all this basically big civil war. And there are a lot of people that are somewhat like our Bannerman there that ended up just blindly following along from what people were telling them to do. And they'd end up getting captured by one side, and then the other side would be like, all right, you go over there, take that town. Then they get captured and they'd end up flipping sides. And these people were essentially just plodding along, doing whatever anyone told them to do. And it's sort of the concept of chivalry and the glorious knight and all that sort of thing wasn't really something that actually existed. And
yeah, so your game heavily deconstructs that theme with like, you're doing this to regain your honor, and goddamn the things you do.
Yeah, exactly. And it was always, everything was sort of veiled in that honorable thing. So it's like, oh, you need to go over there and absolutely slaughter that village of people because that's the honorable thing to do. And you're like, oh, brilliant. That's all I need to get on board, So,
I'm very chuffed to do this.
Yes, of course. Oh, thank you very much. What an honorable thing. So yeah, it's all the reading about some of the things that happened in that sort of big, like, civil war period is I sort of shaking my head at it going, this is ridiculous. And then it's the sort of product of the environment that they're all built up into. So it's all about honor and serving your lord and all that sort of thing. So that was the biggest sort of non-game inspiration for Bannerman for sure.
What actually sparked your interest in medieval combat and such?
That's actually, I'm not even sure, to be honest. That's going back quite a way now, because when I was doing when I started doing reenactment, that was quite a few years ago, so that'd be going on sort of 7, 8 years ago or something like that when I first got into it. I really couldn't tell you actually what originally. Wow, I'm sort of having to think now, and I'm totally at a loss. So I really can't tell you. You know what? It was probably just the shiny armor, to be honest.
Because, like, part of it is, as I was playing the game and looking at the combat animations, like, the first time it really clicked for me was when I used the heavy attack and he flipped it around and pommel bashed the guy in the face. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my god, actual, like, old school medieval swordsmanship. Because that's a thing that's there, but it's not something that you see in a lot of
video games.
I don't think you see it really at all, because it's so I was like, holy shit, he knows about swordsmanship, we need to ask him about this.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's like things like so all the animations in the game were like that's me doing those sort of moves and that sort of thing. So whenever you see any of the characters do pretty much anything, that's basically just me with me rotoscoping my footage of it. So a lot of that sort of thing, I really wanted to put in some of the like historical sort of techniques for the different weapons in there. Like a lot of how the spearman uses his spear as well is very sort of true to what we've got written down and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, the pummel bashing, the murder stroke as they call it, I love that. That's one of my favorites. So it's one of the first things I'm like, I've got to include that.
Pretty sure it's a favorite for most people who are into.
Yeah, it's just
also it's just so solid in the game. Gotta do it.
Yeah, it's one of the most sort of brutal things that you can really think of. You're like, I'm going to take this sword, and you know what? I'm not going to stab you with it. I'll turn it around and use it like a big club. That's perfect.
Cave a skull in, move on.
Yeah.
Which also, like, the detail in the death animations was like...
Well,
Jesus.
actually, the animations in general, I found your whole process on them very interesting. And very impressive.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that's where a lot of the inspiration from Flashback especially came from. That was a game I loved as a kid, mainly because it had such ridiculously smooth animations. And
don't play the remix.
No,
don't do it.
Oh, it took the main thing I loved about
I regret
it.
it.
Put it in the bin.
I did it, and I was like, I mean, the gameplay wasn't bad, but the voice acting and everything, I was like,
no.
Like, if they'd taken out all of the voice acting and the let's make this hip, it wouldn't have been a bad remaster. But it was like you know what? It has an appeal because of how cheesy and bad the dialogue is. But yeah, they like
it falls into so bad it's good sort of territory.
Yeah, that's how I looked at it. I was just like, God damn it.
Yeah, no, not for me. Not for me.
But yeah, I take it that sort of also crossed into you did the enactments. How many years of like training in that sort of style of combat do you have?
Oh, so let's have a look. So reenactment, yeah, I was probably doing that for, I think I was doing that for two and a half or 3 years, and then since then when I was sort of moved over to the LARPing, for example, I started doing some courses in what they call HEMA, so that's historical European martial arts. So basically just fancy term for, you know, hitting people with swords, basically. So that I'll be doing that for a couple of years as well. So I'd hazard a guess at maybe 4 or 5 years, I'd say.
Okay, so you've already sort of alluded that there is another game you're going to be working on. Is it going to be a Berserker Quest 2, a Bannerman 2? Are you going to... any hints for us in the audience?
Any hints? No worries, I can do hints. So it will not be. I'm not looking to do a Bannerman sequel or anything like that. To be honest, I've had enough of animating swords and people in armor and things like that for at least a good couple of years. So the thought of doing any more medieval sort of themed 2D games it makes me sick at this point, to be honest.
Little burnt out.
Yeah, just a touch. So, I would love, just speaking of Berserker Quest quickly, I would love to do some more Berserker Quest games. So I will be doing some more of those in the future. There will always be little free games that I just enjoy doing. So they're kind of like a look at the way RPGs were handled back in the day in a sort of slightly mocking way. So I'd like to do like a couple that go really right back to almost Atari level and sort of, you know, like look at how Atari RPGs really worked. But for the new game, I can I can tell you sort of basically what it's going to be about. So it's essentially it's a roguelite or a roguelike element type game where you
I love roguelikes and roguelikes, like Death State, freaking Rogue Legacy, Dead Cells, etc. I adore them.
the whole idea of this is you're making your way through sort of a abandoned temple, basically, and the idea is playing throughout the whole thing. There is a god essentially over your shoulder that is giving you commandments that you have to adhere to. And these start getting more restrictive as you start playing through. So he'll be, thou shalt not wear armor, thou shalt not evade attacks and things like that. And it starts building and building the further you get down, the stronger your character gets. But it's your choice whether or not to obey the god. So you can choose to go, bugger you, mate, and I'm going to do my own thing. But in which case he will start getting very grumpy with you and potentially making you run more interesting in certain ways through his influence. Whereas if you follow along with what he wants you to do, then things will probably get somewhat easier for you, or he'll be somewhat nicer to you, but you'll be more restricted in what you're sort of able to do and the techniques you can utilize. So that's a sort of the general overview of what we're looking at.
That's a pretty cool concept.
I take it the commandments are going to be somewhat random.
Yes. So in typical roguelike fashion, yeah.
All sorts of random stuff, but yeah, the handicaps.
Yeah, all sorts of fun stuff.
Oh man, that sounds interesting.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm currently already delving in a couple things. As mentioned, Dead Cells and Dark Devotion is another one, and it's just I love those things where you have these handicaps that you can work within, or just be
yes.
No.
Just fuck everything, and this can have no repercussions struck by lightning.
Yeah.
And then I go, well, fuck it, I'm gonna kill you, God. And that sometimes goes well.
Sometimes.
Deicide is a thing.
So the general idea for this sort of game, which at this moment the working title I've got for it is just Commandment, but that might change. But the general idea was playing I think it was Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, which is quite a sort of a real staple roguelike sort of thing, and that has some very interesting gods within it. And they were always my favorite runs in those, were anything involving having sort of a trickster god or something that is basically screwing up your entire run the whole way through. And the general thing from there is maybe I can make basically an entire game out of that concept.
Oh, is there actually going to be multiple gods that you can potentially choose to follow and they would influence different ways, or is there just going to be the one?
Essentially, yeah, there's one god, but he can act in different ways, so you can select. So there are multiple gods for a gameplay purpose. There's multiple gods.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so you can pick all the different types and the different personalities, and they all got their own little benefits and drawbacks to them. So.
Alright, so another thing I would like to know is, so with Bannerman done, what are your current plans in regards to your tutorial videos, the rotoscoping and marketing for game tutorials? Are there any topics you still plan on covering in the future for those?
Yeah, I'd love to just keep going with them at the moment. There's something I really do enjoy doing those, and the only thing with them is to get ideas for the different tutorials, and the best way that I've found to do that is to go on game developer forums or Facebook groups and things like that, where people are asking questions and getting really, really bad answers in response. And then I sort of look at it and go, no, that's all right. That's probably a good thing to do, because a lot of these forums have a lot of they basically have a lot of people that haven't made any games before, giving other people that haven't made games before advice about how to make a game. And so you've essentially you get a lot of blind leading the blind in some of these particular groups, not all of them, but some of them. And the things like marketing, for example, I did that video in particular because I saw a lot of, oh no, you don't market your game. No, you just make a good game. You don't worry about marketing. That's something that sort of big AAA studios do. You don't have time for that. Just make a good game and put it out there. And I'm like, that's the worst advice you could give someone making a game, to just not tell anyone about it. So yeah, that's sort of, I'll have to go looking through some of those forums again, to be honest, and get some more ideas.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I had an actual little side question here that more doubles back towards Bannerman theme-wise. And it's something we sort of touch on in the review, minor thing, but I found it very interesting that it paired off that you're under Crowley and he is a dick. Like,
yes, he is.
I loathed that guy and was like, I'm just waiting for the opportunity I can kick you in the nuts. I appreciate that that you can kick people in the nuts in Bannerman.
Yeah.
Good. I found that with the sword and shield and was like, ka-ching, yes.
Yes, you're like, nut kick, done.
But I ended up actually really liking, God damn it, Otherlord's name. Not Crowley.
Randall.
Randall. I really liked Randall, and I was like, wait a second, he just punched me in the thing. He never... And I thought about it, I'm like, A, that's really humiliating, but B, the only time you're able to use a punch in the game is when you're choosing to spare someone.
Yes.
So he went out of his way to spare your life, despite the fact you're swinging like a broadsword at his face.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I serving Crowley? He's a dick, and like Randall doesn't even seem like a bad guy. He was like going over. I'm just like,
Yeah. As Josh, one of my music fellas, said, he's Bannerman is not the smartest man.
Yeah.
No.
You kind of notice that as you go through.
I mean, I really liked how it addressed things like PTSD and guilt because of like all the dreams he gets. I'm like, yeah, he's got a bit on his mind here.
Yeah, that's
That's
something in particular I wanted to sort of address is a lot of people think that sort of PTSD essentially, it's that started with World War I and we called it shell shock, and sort of before that everything was fine. It's no, it wasn't. There's a lot of sort of a big history of, we didn't call it PTSD, but we called it all sorts of different other things throughout history, and it goes for all the way back. And it's sort of something people like to gloss over. Sort of, especially, it all falls under that idea of the chivalrous knight and all that sort of thing. And people are like, the medieval sort of period was this happy time, and it's basically like Skyrim or Oblivion.
Glorious adventurers skipping off in the sunset in their shining armor, arm in arm.
Yeah, exactly. So it all kind of falls into that same sort of rhythm that I've got there with that. So yeah.
I really liked though how it was depicted. Like I looked at it, I'm like, this is trauma. Wow.
Yeah.
And it just goes downhill from there, and you just watch like everyone you're going with getting worse as the whole thing goes. Other than Crowley, who's just a dick all the way through. He's the same.
Yeah, he's also the only one that doesn't sort of engage in any battle the whole way through as well. So he's always sitting at the back going, "Oh yeah, this is all right."
I was like, is he trying to get the dude killed? Is this like some sort of passive aggressive like die from little shit?
Pretty much. It's also that you basically have no worth to him at all, so he's just using you like a chess piece, and he's like, go over there and get that, and if you get it, then he's like, oh good, yes, of course you did. and if you died on the way, then he'd be like, oh yes, typical, all right, you go do it. So
which is hilarious, because I don't think anyone else, if he put that chess piece in that position, probably would have managed it in his army, all given. No,
that's right.
You get your nickname.
Yeah.
You get your nickname for a reason.
Yeah.
And god damn. Oh.
Alright.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can buy Bannerman on Steam, and the soundtrack is available there as well. You can follow at Armitage Games on Twitter, and it's Armitage Games as well on Facebook. There you can keep track of Michael's content. Be sure to check out his tutorials and documentary series on the Armitage Games YouTube channel. Anywhere else you want to direct people?
No, I think that's about it. I think you covered pretty much everything.
Oh, any final words for our viewers then, or maybe any promising indie devs who are still watching?
Oh, yeah, promising indie devs. Finish your game. I'm not even kidding. I was like,
no, I'm aware of Steam's early access.
Yes. Yes, instead of starting a new game, if you're thinking about it right now, consider finishing the one that you've currently got underway, or maybe the other one that you've shelved from a couple of months ago, or the one before that. Try finishing again.
Good stuff.
Thanks so much for joining us here.
No worries at all. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
It was seriously a pleasure, and when you're done your next game, we'd love to have you on board again to talk about that.
Yeah.
Sure thing. Yeah, definitely.
I also really hope you have a savage remark to finish that interview on, too.
That's a sign I think I'm more out of savagery.
To the viewers who tuned in, thanks, and if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, we hope you're interested in all the new content we're going to be bringing up in the upcoming weeks.
Also, if you aren't too familiar with Bannerman and would like to know a bit about it before you go into it, either check out Armitage Games channel, or we have a couple of reviews on it, one short for those who don't have much time and one a bit longer. So
for those who need the important details.
Yep. So take a look at those if you want. And the other thing is, if you are an aspiring indie dev or just love games, we have a Discord server that's linked in the description. Feel free to join.
With all that said, we'll catch you next time.